It is real nice to have you with us today. I think this may be our largest turnout that we've had on this annual, we call it Founders Day or Founders Luncheon. I want to thank the leadership at Wake Tech over the years for supporting our efforts to do this. And at this time, I'm going to recognize Scott Rawls to give us a welcome, official welcome to his campus. Okay. And by the way, I'm really glad to see this young man back in North Carolina.
I enjoy still being called a young man. It doesn't happen too much anymore. But I want to have my colleagues here to join me in welcoming you to Wake Tech. First, just looking across this crowd, I was talking to Reed Pear. We've been watching the PBS Ken Burns country music, and this sort of reminds me looking like one of those panoramic pictures of the Grand Ole Opry. And I mean that the legends are here, not that a bunch of hillbillies are here. That's what I mean by that. But it is wonderful to see this crowd. This is something I look forward to, something we look forward to. It is wonderful to have you at Wake Tech. For me, it's wonderful. I've been here 6 months, and I tell people my face hurts from smiling all the time. And, there are a lot of big shoulders in this room, and I'm fortunate I stand on some big shoulders, get to stand on Steve Scott's shoulders, who stood on Bruce Howell's shoulders, who stood on Colonel Robert LeMay's shoulders. So that's what this community college system's about, and we're so honored and privileged to have you here at Wake Tech. We're very proud of Wake Tech. It's a remarkable, remarkable place. Neil McLeod, who had such a Wake Tech history here as well. Wake Tech is now 74,000 students, 10 sites, 6 campuses. Actually, on this campus, we were here Monday, all 3 of us with Governor Cooper. We had a $40 million groundbreaking for our new automotive center that will be built right over here. And Rick Hendrick, who was here, who given us $1 million. And I think every kind of car you could imagine was here. Every car person was around. It was remarkable. So lots of exciting things that are happening here, thanks to these folks who made Wake Tech what it is. So thank you all for being here. So I'm here to thank you, or to welcome you to Wake Tech, but I thought it'd be presumptive for me to welcome you to this campus, because if you notice coming in, this is the Steve Scott Northern Wake campus. So I think that we should let Steve Scott do the official welcome for this campus. So Steve.
Thank you, Dr. Rawls. I guess moving forward, one of your names has to be Scott in order to be president of Wake Tech. So I don't know. I didn't see that on the position description. But this campus was a labor of love for me. Bruce had gotten the land for this campus, and I got the opportunity to build it. Dr. Rawls, never did I ever think that we would get an opportunity to build 4 more campuses and a couple of centers during 15 years here. But it took the growth in this community. This is a fantastic campus here, by the way. You can't believe, I'm going to guess you don't know it's 12 years old. We opened in 07, and this is 19, fall of 07 for this campus. So I'm glad to have you on this campus. I think that the best things for community colleges are in the future here in North Carolina. I thank you for your leadership that you have provided to this system. And I had the opportunity, to work for 3 community colleges. I see Lonnie Blizzard out there, and got to work with at his school. I'm going to call it your school, Lonnie, for a while, and a wonderful time at Southeastern. And, of course, here, Martin, working with you at the system office was a different experience. Well, wait a minute. We had 9/11. Martin was in the air the morning that the planes hit on 9/11, and he and his bride had to turn around and go back to England because they wouldn't let them land in the United States. So it was an exciting period of time for me. So I've been retired for a year. My wife has passed away during that time, so it's been a hell of a lot of changes for me. And like many of you, I had shoulder surgery. So, you know, if you just hold up your arm like this, if you've had rotator cuff surgery, then that you will join the fraternity or the sorority, because I had a number of women to tell me that they'd had it too. So, welcome to the Scott campus. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm proud to be a part of the organization that you have built in our state. Thank you.
We invited the chairman of the State Board of Community Colleges to come and welcome us this morning. I'll say a few words. They're on a retreat at Cape Fear? And standing in for the state president is Wesley Bedard. And he's going to give us a brief welcome from the system office. Brief.
All right. Good morning. It's great to be here. We're still morning? Yeah, or close to it anyway. But I want to share the 8 words that every president dreads hearing and every retired president dreads hearing. I'm from Raleigh, and I'm here to help. And the only other phrase they don't want to hear even more is 10 words. I'm from the system office, and I'm here to help. But I'm not here to help today. I'm here just to bring you greetings on behalf of President Hans and our state board. But also, when he asked me, could I do this, I said, well, yeah, I'll be happy to. And then I thought, well, why did he ask me? At our system office, I'm the oldest rat left in the barn. And so I know a lot of you people out here. And when George Fouts was up there as the interim president, I'm an old country boy, so I get to the office nice and early. And if you know George gets there before early. I mean, he's just there really early. And but he'd come up by my office a lot of mornings, and we'd just chat about system history. And I was really flat. I'd go home and tell him, man, George came by, and we just talked for 40 minutes. And then I finally realized I'm the only person who remembers half the story George is telling. He can't share it with anybody else in the building. It's got to be me. So, but I'm glad it was, because I really appreciated that opportunity. But I just, 2 things. One, I want to say thank you. You are the pioneers. I had breakfast last week with Ken Bohan. He had a slightly more colorful description of this group, but you are the heroes of our system, and I thank you so much for all that you've done. And also, I want to tell you that you adhered to the principles that Dr. Herring had of taking people where they are and carrying them as far as they can go. And I think we're still doing that within our system. And particularly, if you've seen a new marketing campaign for our system, your higher education, HIRE, we never left technical training, but we're re-emphasizing technical training, which is what we were founded on and what we do better than anybody in the world. So we're happy to be doing that. I'm happy to be here today. I may just start showing up at your meetings, because I've just enjoyed connecting with old friends. A number of people in the room had fired me, and fortunately not a single person in this room has fired me. So thank you for that, and have a great day.
Thank you, Wesley. I don't think that Peter Hans could have done any better than that. I really don't. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Clark to come stand beside me. Most of you, I think, know Clark Adams from the emails you get, if nothing else. But he is a remarkable young man. He's an English professor, I believe I've got that right, at Randolph Community College, and has taken on as a passion of his the history of this system, to retain the history, to enjoy the history, and you'd be amazed at what he knows. I won't do it, but I think I could put him on the spot and pick Elton Newman right there and say, when was he president of Halifax. And when did he leave? 88 to 98. Elton, was he right? Okay, that was not staged. I mean, this guy has got, and what we put together here, the visuals that you see, the people that have gone on along with us, he helps us find photographs, and we could not, a bunch of old timers like us, could not do this without Clark Adams, and I really do appreciate him, and I'll say that again before we leave today. Clark. He is going to help me recognize the first-time guests that are here with us today. If he's got a mic there.
What we'd like to do is recognize those who are attending for the very first time today. So if you could stand and we'll come around and tell us your name and what institution you worked for and the years of service. Your first time
I've been here.
You've been here. Okay.
Thank you. David Sink. I started at Davidson Community College. Worked with Ed Wilson at Roanoke Showan as his academic dean for 11 months, and then Ed went to Raleigh, so I became president of Roanoke Showan, and there 4 years, and then was president of Blue Ridge for 20 years. The first time here. It's nice to see everybody again.
Someone else attending for the first time.
Tony Garita from Davidson County Community College. I began in 1967, immediately out of grad school, and retired in 2000, and I enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Are you a first time? Okay.
I'm Pete Wainwright. I was hired by this man sitting beside me. Let's see, I was there from, I believe it was 1970 to, well, actually 1973 till I retired in 2002. I was the business manager. Thank you.
All right, others here for the first time.
My name is George McLeod. I taught at Forsyth Community College in 1960, and I was hired in 1964 at Catawba Valley Community College. I taught for 30 years. I retired in 1990. I taught auto mechanics, had a wonderful time, and I still run into students today that recognize me, and I say, "Who are you?"
We have some others on the second row, first time here. How about on our third row? I know we've got at least a few there. There you go.
Gary Green. I retired as president at Forsyth Tech Community College, serving there from 2001 until December of 2018. And it's great to see so many colleagues, and it's nice to be one of the youngsters in the group here. So.
Come around behind you. Thank you. We got some others that are here for the first time on this row.
Thank you. I'm Marion Altman, and I'm from Pamlico, and that's my home base. I've lived there most all my life, and I retired back there. I was there from 99 to 09, and it was probably the best 10 years of my life. Thank you. I know we made a difference.
Okay. We'll catch this back row, too. Are you here for the first time, Dr. Acker?
Clark thinks I was here for the first time, but I went to Wilbur's Barbecue back when the old timers met over in Goldsboro. But anyway, I'm Don Reichert, and I was at James Sprunk Community College and then Johnston Community College, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you. We got a few more here, too. There you go.
Hi, I'm Sarah Brett, and I'm from Robertson Community College, 65 to 95.
I'm Elizabeth Nye from Robertson Community College. I started there in 65 in the nursing program and left there as a retiree in 97. Thank you.
I'm Hubert Bullard. I actually started at Robinson Community College in 1967 while still a student in college as a part-time learning lab coordinator. I had a lot of jobs there over the years. I left in 1990. I was vice president of continuing education, went over to Fayetteville Tech and retired there in 98. But the sweetest time in my life was coming back to Robinson Community College when Fred Williams called me up and said, how would you like to be my interim vice president for about 3 months? That lasted about a year. And it was like going to a party every day.
Let's catch some on this section.
Myra Johnson. I began at Craven in 1979. In 1983, I was an adjunct faculty member at Isothermal, and in 2007, I was named their president and retired in 2013.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, but I'm not really.
I'm Randy Parker. I'm one of the newest retirees in the group. I retired August 1st. I've got 40-some years in the system. I'm a community college graduate of Lenoir Community College. I was a student at Lenoir Community College when Dr. Ben Fountain was president there prior to him going to the system office. Reed Parrott was my 7th grade teacher at Contentia. So thank you for that great education, Dr. Parrott. While at Lenoir, I worked for some great presidents. I worked under Dr. Jesse McDaniel. I worked under Dr. Lonnie Blizzard. Joyce Cherry was an interim. Dr. Steve Scott was also worked for while I was there. I became president after 25 years of service at Lenoir Community College. I became president at Vance Granville Community College. I was there for 7 years and just recently retired from Guilford Tech Community College for 8 years of service. So it's been many of you have been my role models and mentors over the years of the 40-some years I've been in this system. So thank you for all the work that everybody's done, and it's a great time to be here with everyone today.
I'm Kenan Briggs. I started the system office in 1997. President Lancaster gave me an opportunity to be the system CFO. I retired in 2012, and since that time have been on a lot of campuses doing a lot of fun and good work with many colleges. So thank you.
Excuse me.
No.
Okay.
I'm Dolores Park. I worked at Davidson County Community College, Guilford Technical Community College, and the system office. And I thank you for the invitation to see all these wonderful people. I'm not a president, but I work with many of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Okay, coming down this way, let's see who we've got. Right here, I think, Mr. Sharon. Sharon?
Ron Sharon. I was a faculty member in Adult and Community College Education Department at NC State for a number of years, and I'm so pleased to be here to recognize some outstanding people who were students of mine. Lonnie Blizzard, I just recognized Lonnie here. Reed Parrott, Ed Wilson, Charlie Russell, many, many of you. I have a lot of fond memories of my work with community college people in North Carolina. I worked very closely with Ed Boone and the Community College Internship Program. I served as a graduate administrator in our department, and one of my main jobs was to recruit students and to help you get admitted into that great program at NC State, and this is a real privilege to be here today.
George Faust doesn't want to be introduced, but he's here as a first-time attendee. All right, and then we got...
No, it's not.
Don't give him the mic.
No, it's not the first time. It's not the second time. I'm Ken Boham, and I was president at Caldwell Community College and Technical Institute for 21 years. I've been interim president at James Sprunt. I've been interim president at Malin. I've been interim president at Martin. 14 months ago, I was there for 13 months. I am now back at Martin again as interim president. It's good to be here, Clark.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. We're going to recognize some other folks at this time. We've got a few folks we want to recognize for various reasons. One, I'd like to see who our oldest attendee is here today, okay? Is there anyone over 92 here? Versi Eller. Got a book for you. Can you?
93 last month.
93 last month. Let's give her a hand. Would you share what you did in the system?
What?
Would you share with us what you did in the system?
I was the nursing director for nursing and allied health with the Department of Community College from about 1968 to I was there 23 years, and when I started, there were 3 programs, and when I left, there were 50. And I set up a lot of allied health programs. I didn't do all that by myself. I worked with some wonderful presidents and deans and nursing directors, and we literally built a system of education for nursing in North Carolina. And if you don't believe it, just go to the hospital and ask those nurses, where did they graduate from? And almost everyone, I'm going to tell you, a community college. And thank you all very much. I enjoyed it, working with all these presidents. In fact, every one in the system, the 58, I visited their school and helped them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, just a few other pieces. Does anyone here employed in the system prior to 1960? Anyone employed in the system prior to 1960? 1960, I believe Mr. McLeod mentioned he started at Forsyth Tech that year. I think he's our earliest. What's that? All right. Let's give him a hand. 1960, Forsyth IEC. Okay. Do we have anyone that started in 1961? 1962, Avron Upchurch, Central Carolina Community College. And the IEC before that, Lee County. Thank you. All right. How about 1963? Anyone start in 1963 with the system? Fred Mayerly was hired at the Davidson County Community College the summer it opened. Let's give him a hand. Drafting instructor. I think that's all of it. So we do have some pioneers here. Let's give everyone a hand, folks.
Now, we get to a special part of our program today. Almost everyone in this room knows of Sandy Shugart. When Sandy accepted our invitation to come and speak with us, he's got some prior history in this system, which Ed Wilson will tell you about. I knew that Ed and George had worked with Sandy in the system office. And I said, well, maybe the two of you can introduce Sandy. And they went through some kind of process. Sandy, I don't know if this is good news or bad news. Ed won, I think, and he's going to introduce you to our group of leaders, former leaders and pioneers. Thank you. Ed Wilson.
Thank you, Parker. I have to tell this one story. I was working for Governor Scott in the system office, and he called me one day from my office, which was kind of right across the hall, and he said, I want you to come meet your vice president for program services, because we didn't have anybody in that slot. So I walked in, and that's when I met Sandy Shugart for the first time, and he came to work for us later. but I was worried about him. I just didn't think that these people that were presidents in the system, I was afraid they might just cut him up, but I was wrong. He took care of them, so he did a wonderful job for us. He served for 20 years as the 4th president of Valencia Community College in Greater Orlando. Valencia serves some 75,000 students in Associate of Arts, Associate of Science, and bachelor's degrees program, as well as numerous workforce development certifications. The college has been recognized as among the best in the nation for high rates of graduation, transfer, and career placement, winning the first Aspen Prize for Excellence Award several years ago. Prior to Valencia, Sandy served as 8 years as president of North Harris College, in which is now known as the Lone Star College District in northern margins of Houston. He served for 8 years as the vice president for program services in our system. Sandy and Jane married 40 years, raised 4 children, all involved in the ministry and the arts. In addition to his work at the college, Sandy is a published poet and songwriter, continues to perform and record original music, and is the author of Leadership in the Crucible of Work, Discovering the Inner Life of an Authentic Leader. Sandy holds a PhD from UNC in Teaching and Learning in 1986, and he was a distinguished alumni of that institution in 2016. Let me present Sandy Sugar.
Well, good afternoon. What a pleasure to see you. Hey, Bruce. What a pleasure to see you all. I didn't get around to everybody as I wandered around before the meeting, but I'm so pleased to be here. So pleased to feel this young again. It's been a long time since I felt this young. I think it was, if you accept the one cruise that we took, in which Jane and I were clearly the youngest on board, it's been a long time. So I look around and I see my teachers and mentors and coaches and people who taught me this business. And so to those of you who know that story, I was 26 when Bob hired me. And it was a big joke, I'm sure. I wasn't worried. To me, it was a temp job anyway. The band was going to make it someday. And so I wasn't awfully worried about it. But I knew nothing. I didn't know a single thing. I'd only been on a community college campus once, and that was take a GED test at Central Piedmont Community College after I returned from high school in Europe, where they didn't give diplomas, and UNC wouldn't accept my application without a diploma, so I went over to CPCC and took the test. And I was left in a position where I knew I could not lead on the basis of any kind of knowledge. I mean, I could learn over time, but I didn't know a darn thing about higher education, really, and certainly not about a community college movement. And so I got some good advice from a friend who's not here with us. He died just a few months ago. Herman Porter said, "If you can't lead from expertise, then lead from principle." And that's what I had to do. And I discovered that people were hungry for principle-centered leadership, and they would supply all the technical information in the world and teach it to you over time. And I was very fortunate to be surrounded with deeply principled leaders who taught me the business. And I'm still using the tools you gave me years ago, now, 36, 37 years later. George cannot introduce me because we signed a mutual non-disclosure agreement 30 years ago as we travel from conference to conference. So that's how you got the job, Ed. We never slept together. And there's several others here I need to add to that agreement. But I didn't come to talk about myself. I came really to help recognize what your work means beyond what you can see here in North Carolina, because it really does mean something. I want to talk to you about disruption and disruptors. There's a fairly famous professor named Clayton Christensen at Harvard University Business School. He's been writing and speaking, particularly in a book he wrote called The End of Higher Education, by which he did not mean the purposes, but the end of higher education, in a book just 2-3 years ago. And he's been predicting that higher education, as we know it, is seen its best days and is about to disappear. In fact, in a speech he gave last year at Harvard, he predicted half of the independent colleges and universities in America would be closed for business within 10 years on the basis of disruption. Remember, however, that he's speaking from an institution where the cost of the MBA in which he teaches now is $400,000 for the degree, hence his sense of exposure. But he says this is going to happen, and it's not because of technology per se. It's because the business model gets disrupted. Technology enables the business model to get disrupted, but it's a new business model that displaces the old one, that causes what he calls disruptive innovation. And so things like artificial intelligence and machine learning and massively online courses, all those sorts of things are the tools that enable someone to invent a new kind of business to displace the old one. And there's some reasons to take this seriously. There are some fairly serious disruptions occurring around us still, the roots of which, particularly in the independent sector, are found in their own dysfunctional business model. Some of you will remember in the early 1980s, just before I went to work for Bob, that we hit the baby trough between the baby boom and the echo baby boom. We had this steep decline in numbers of people graduating from high school around 1980. And I can remember sitting in policy conversations in Governor Hunt's office where we were wondering what we were going to do with the physical plant of the private colleges that were going to go out of business at that time. We figured perhaps 20 across North Carolina would be out of business within 3 or 4 years. We were wrong, as usual. What happened was they discovered a new way of enhancing the model they had. Desperate for survival, independent colleges reached out to the tools of postmodern consumer capitalism and took hold of the marketing tools that were being used at that time. They were new. They gathered all sorts of data, massive amounts of data on consumers and their behavior, and then used that data to tune very intrusive communication systems, marketing systems, to manipulate people into purchasing behavior. This is postmodern marketing. And they did it with college. We call it enrollment management. And it's still going on. If you have grandchildren who are of college age or nearing it, you know that they're getting plied with thousands of communications a week. Social media, just a few years ago it was postcards and emails. Now it's all in social media and that sort of stuff. And they're just buried with these faux-friendly messages. Their job is to, and this is their language, reach and convert prospects into students, and they calculate conversion rates from the funnel of marketing into their organizations. Do you remember all this? This was in the 80s when this hit independent higher education and then began to be adopted by public higher education shortly after that. It started a whole new consulting industry, and it created a new admissions and enrollment business, the excesses of which have become really clear in the last 6 months, haven't they? Helping people send their privileged children to some kind of guardianship so they'll qualify for a Pell Grant. $400,000 bribes to get people into USC, of all places. It's made it into all sectors of higher education, community colleges included. With us, it came in through a benign door, the door of student retention, and many of you have attended Noel Levitt's conferences with me I can remember bringing Randy Levitz and Noel to North Carolina to dean's meetings to talk to us about how to use these tools. But further, beginning with independent higher education, this consumer-driven behavior, this thinking about college as a business that you market, led to other changes. And the big change in independent higher education was a new value proposition. A simple, deceitful, compelling myth. The value proposition goes like this: excellence equals exclusivity. And exclusivity equals expensiveness. That's at the core of the last 20 years of business innovation in higher education. That lie. And this began the rapid ratcheting up of tuitions at institutions who were sure that the higher the sticker price, the higher the perception of value. And while they raised the sticker price, they raised the discount rate and treated it as though it were a merit scholarship. The average discount rate at independent colleges now is over 50%. Their tuition on the website doesn't mean a thing. You have to go through a calculator on the website to figure out what your likely tuition will be there. And this was all meant to manipulate families into believing that this was a spectacular value. This is a $60,000 a year university, and I'm getting to go for $30,000. I got a $30,000 scholarship. How can I turn that down? It's perverse when you step back and look at it. And it worked. It worked for nearly 30 years. Year after year, tuition went up, the rate of discount went up, and the enrollment and net return on enrollment went up. You can calculate the algorithms for this net return. So raise tuition, raise discount rate, marginal revenue growth every year until 2009. And it plateaued, and now there's been no net revenue growth from tuition discounting for 9 years. It's not working anymore. There are a few institutions that see it as insane and are trying to get off the merry-go-round. You may know a few of them. I think Converse was the first I noticed. Who wants to go to Converse College and pay $38,000, $40,000 of tuition to become a music teacher in a middle school? But they, of course, were discounting by $22,000. So they finally said, let's just stop. Let's actually charge everybody the actual tuition. And it's an experiment. They're not sure it'll work. Anyway, this whole merry-go-round led to all sorts of problems. Parents and students can't justify 6-figure degree costs to be credentialed into 5-figure careers. The college debt scandals related very directly to this, and it's reshaped not only consumer behavior but public attitudes towards higher education, where we've lost credibility and confidence over the debt scandal. And all of that's led to a deep disruption of both the model of those independent colleges and many of the public institutions who followed their path. They're facing pretty tough challenges. If you're in an independent college and you don't have something like 35% of your operating budget covered in your endowment, and you don't have enrollment north of 3,000 students, you are extremely vulnerable. Meanwhile, in the public sector, all this same stuff, whether we did it or not, has colored attitudes towards us. And we're suffering regular state budget cuts and declining credibility and support from the public at both the local and the state level in many states. We still have not recovered the state level of investment nationally per FTE that we had in 2008. But this isn't the kind of disruption you were involved in. You were involved in something much more noble and important and closer, I think, to Clayton Christensen's model of disruptive innovation. First, let me recall that definition for you. Here's what Clayton said in this article he wrote about 9 years ago. It's one of the most quoted articles and probably least read. in all of business literature. It's remarkable. So here's what he says a disruptive innovation is. First, somebody invents a way to do something way cheaper than it's being done now. A product or a service. They find a way to do that just dramatically less expensively. At first, the quality of the product or service isn't very good. And everybody knows it isn't. It may even become the butt of jokes. And it doesn't really compete with the dominant market players. It competes against non-consumption. I think of Datsun in 1968. My brother was being taken to the car dealer. He got his first car. And Dad took us to the Datsun dealership, and I was along, and my brother said, Dad, if you buy me a Datsun, even a brand new Datsun, I'll never have a girlfriend. So it's competing against non-consumption. The people buy in who wouldn't have bought anything else because they couldn't. Gradually, however, the disruptive model improves its quality, sometimes almost unperceived by the other players. And over time, the quality of what they do gets to be very close to the quality of the market leaders, and still at a dramatically reduced cost, because they've innovated on the business model. And when it reaches that point, they rapidly take market share from the dominant players. Does this sound familiar? This is who we are. This is what you did. In my town, if you graduate from high school and go to college anywhere, 1 in 15, is that right? No, excuse me, 1 in 6 goes to an independent college. 1 in 6 goes to a public university. 2 out of 3 go to Valencia. Dominant market share. It's true across the country. So I admire the pioneers who invented the disruption. Very low cost, built on a powerful vision of democracy in education. That led to serious public investment at both the state and local level. It was built on kind of an unusual labor model that no one else would try in a traditional college. It reduced opportunity cost to consumers by taking the education to within a few minutes of everybody's home. It was an innovative vision of programming that combined the liberal arts and professional education with a technical education. Everybody thought that was crazy. Most importantly, the vision was based on a kind of excellence that's inclusive. Inclusive excellence. That was the real innovation. Dallas Herring and I.E. Reedy and Ed Wilson Sr. and Terry Sanford, and I mean, we can all name the apostles, can't we? But what they knew as they midwifed this system into existence was this notion of inclusion was the crux of the matter. That we would serve the top 100% of students, the whole spectrum, while the rest of higher education continued to find excellence by the numbers of qualified people they turned away. And the results, the real market disruption, is amazing. Today in America, the American community colleges enroll 41% of all higher education. 60% of all freshmen. Most importantly to me, 45% of all the bachelor's degrees awarded to candidates in America today are to transfers from community colleges. They brought credit to the degree from another institution. 45%. I promise you, not a single university in this state understands that. These colleges are more diverse, more responsive to local communities, more connected to employers, more involved with local high schools, more engaged with technology to serve students at scale, and more important, They're closer to the access agenda than any other sector. They're an amazing thing. And we do, and we should, give homage to the handful who stewarded the idea of democracy's colleges into inception, most of whom aren't with us anymore. But here's what I want to say to you. It would not have been disruptive. It could not have disrupted had your work not been done. The long, slow years of incremental improvement are crucial to the disruption. The battles to improve transferability of credit, the campaigns to keep the public investment in the system flowing through the ebbs and flow of political shifts locally. Lord, I remember every 3 years, some county, Mitchell, Avery, or Yancey, refused to put up the money for poor little Malin. Every year, there was that kind of issue to be wrestled through. The constant reinvention of programming for jobs and technologies that no one could have imagined when we built the system originally. The struggles to offer programs, Versi, the struggle to offer programs such as registered nursing when others were protecting their turf by criticizing our quality. You could write a book just about the transformation of the lives of women in America from the associate degree nursing program. That thing alone has made more people economically independent than any social program I can name. The whole evolution of the systems of accountability and resource allocation and staffing and staff development and leadership development and curriculum review, all the in the mind, daily grind work that over decades took what was originally competing against non-consumption and made it really good and still really cheap. That's what makes it a disruption. Without that improvement, there is no disruption. And this, I think, is the legacy of most of your work. Those of us who are in the middle, who inherited an infant system, still the butt of jokes, and labored year in and year out to grow the quality of the thing, what students experience and the outcomes we achieve, to a level where there are just as many people in the top quintile economically interested in what we do as in the bottom. And we're beginning to demonstrate to the country that talent doesn't know what zip code it was born in. So, I started the talk with Christensen's assertion of the end of higher education as we know it. I think the much more likely future is continued transformation. What should you look for? Here's what I see, and it's hopeful to me. Across the country, the obsession with enrollment, particularly at high access colleges and open enrollment colleges, has been diverted now, and we're able to consider outcomes, quality, learning, results as the main thing. Enrollment, rightly, is important as a business outcome, but it's no mission, and the obsession with it is over. I'm not sure we've fully replaced it with models of quality that work, but the obsession with FTE is over. That's a good thing. The promise initiatives across the country in higher ed, the best of which probably in the country is the Carolina Covenant. Those are beginning to remove financial barriers, some better than others. The financial barriers that keep the top 100% from making their way from one institution to another, from finding access, and so on. I think it's one major barrier to remove. I don't think it's a panacea, but it had to be done. Transfer, a new paradigm in transfer is emerging, one that can work. It's not emerging yet in North Carolina, but it can and should around the country, where the pathways to transfer are intentional and goals are set among institutions in an ecosystem for what they want to achieve through transfer relationships. It's no longer just filing forms of articulation agreements are actually driving changes in the patterns of student enrollment. My institution provides 25% of the graduates at our local university, and it's the second largest university in the country. And we double the diversity of their graduating class, and we set goals to do that. Lastly, the stigma long associated with high access institutions is rapidly disappearing. The language and the practice of inclusive excellence has found its way beyond community colleges now into the larger higher education community. The American Association of Colleges and Universities, which I think is the best of the university professional associations, has had for 5 years and will have probably for another decade as their primary focus, hammering out what inclusive excellence means. You taught them that. So, again, I'm not worried about the end of higher education. I'm excited about the transformation that started with a disruptive innovation that you helped build and that's still being built. Not worried because we've been to this dance. We know the steps. You taught us the music, and the dance goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. I think Ed, Bob Scott saw something in a 26-year-old kid, what we would call today a kid. Back there, early in his president leadership of this system, and we see the results of that. Sandy, thank you very much. It's wonderful to see you back here. Let me throw out a Sandy Shugart story. He'll probably remember it. I was at College of Albemarle, and it was probably the late mid-'80s. And I'd been to a meeting in Raleigh, and as was my custom, as I went back home to Elizabeth City, if I could work it in, I would go to a little place called Cherry's Barbecue. How many ever ate at Cherry's Barbecue? Somewhere east of Wilson. You really had to go out of your way to get to it. And I went in and had my barbecue, and there was a meeting going on in the back, assemblage of people. I didn't know exactly who or what they were. But I kept hearing a voice, and I thought, that sounds like Sandy Shugart to me. And sure enough, in a while, he came popping out of a back room. He had been working, talking with a group of, I guess, volunteer firemen, I'm guessing. I think Roger Worthington may have been with you. I'm not sure of that. But I was amazed to see Sandy Shugart in that neck of the woods. And what was your favorite dessert there, Sandy? Banana pudding. God, they had good banana pudding. Yeah, it was, I think it was a wash tub, really. I think it was a huge amount of banana pudding. But thank you so much for taking time from your schedule. Jane, thank you for coming with him, and it's been a pleasure to reunite. And to hear I've always thought you were a big idea guy that thought outside of the box, and you haven't changed much. Yeah, thank you very much. At this time, we move to a little, I guess, sadder part of the program. We want to remember 5 of our colleagues, that being former community college presidents, retired, who passed away since our last meeting. Clark has put together some videos here, but before I get to the first one, you see Raymond Stone's name on the agenda. Raymond was going to be here today, I called him last week. I hadn't heard from him for a while because he was going to talk about Herman Porter, because he and Herman worked together in the foundation years of this system. And I couldn't get an answer. He finally called me, it was about 6 days ago, I think, the middle of last week. He said, Parker, I just got home from the hospital. They removed part of my intestine, colon cancer. He had a successful operation. He said, no chemo in the future. All the checks they do for the nodes that are in that part of your body, no evidence of spread. So he was very optimistic. He said, let's talk again before next Wednesday. So yesterday, or the day before, I started calling. Didn't get an answer on his home phone or his cell phone. I thought, God, this is not good. So I looked up on the internet the phone number for the retirement village in Hendersonville where he is living. And the woman there talked with me, and I was a little surprised at the information she was willing to tell me, but she thinks a lot of Raymond. Raymond had a heart attack this past weekend, but he's going back home today, which to me is a good sign. You know, it could have been much worse. So I'll talk with him, probably not today, but I'll try to reach out tomorrow and see how he's doing, and I'll let some of you know, because he was really looking forward to being with us. So with that said, Clark, let's all of us remember Marvin Joyner. He was a student in this system, I think was in the first graduating class at Wilson IEC, I believe it was called at that time. And then he became, I think he went out into private business industry for a couple of years, and he came back and got on the staff there at Wilson, was there, I don't know, 15, 20 years, and maybe he was the chief academic officer, I believe that's right. And he was selected to be president of Central Carolina Community College, and he was president and that was in '83, he was president until 2004. We circulate information when we lose one of our colleagues, so I'm not going to repeat everything that was in his obituary, but you know his record. Marvin was the kind of guy, particularly if it dealt with FTEs and finance, you could take it to the bank. He had studied it from all angles and had quite a record at Central Carolina and will truly be missed. The next person, Bill Killian. Dave, I guess David Sink, you followed Bill, did you not? Bill was the founding president, was, I think, 92. Is it up there? When he died. I think he and Raymond lived very close to each other. They were in different retirement facilities, but he passed away in early this year. He was a president while I was a president. He was a man you respected. He was quiet. He didn't say a whole lot, but whatever he said made a whole lot of sense. People really respected him in the system, and I think in the community as well. Dan. I didn't know that.
And others went in the following year, but they were the first two that Dr. Boone recruited and got involved in that program. And Bruce and Bill were the
first two? Okay.
And that was the first year as well.
Yeah.
But, and then the smaller group of us went in the very next year.
Thank you, Dan. I did not know that. Bruce was, if you did not know him, he was president at College of the Albemarle from 68 to 75, and I followed him. Then he went on to North Carolina Wesleyan, but he was a colleague and a dear friend. Thank you, Dan. Okay, next. Herman Porter. What a career he had. A truly great educator. Started in the public school system in vocational education. And when the community college system was being formed, he worked beside Dr. Reedy. Raymond Stone was involved at that point in the beginnings of the system, and was in his system office for many, many years. I went to Wayne Community College and was president there for 6 years. That wasn't the end of his community college work. He then went to, later on, became a member of the state board. I think he served maybe 8 years, maybe 2 terms. I'm not sure of that. I know he was chair of the state board for a couple of years, and very instrumental in the founding of our organization. And it was a great loss to us, to the small group that works in putting this on each year. But Herman is missed every day by those of us closely involved in this, in the work of this organization. Next one. Phil Taylor, founding president, another founding president in our system, 68 to 88, 20 years. He was at Halifax Community College. He started his career in public schools, vocational education. You'll see a pattern as we go through these leaders. A quiet man who all of us respected him, and I think he had moved to Tarboro into a retirement facility when he passed away. And next, Larry Linker died, 4 or 5 months ago. He had been the president at Clark's College, Randolph Community College, but had been at that college for, God, I don't know, 40 years probably, in a lot of capacities, and then wound up being president for 12 years. Larry was a good man, and certainly he had done a lot in that community. If you go on that list of the 5 that I've discussed, the last 4 started their careers in vocational education in the high schools of North Carolina. Agriculture, it was called. Okay. Thank you, Fred. Absolutely. And that was a pattern in the early days of the first of the White Sock group. Now that we don't have time to go into that story, but that used to be a ritual back in the Jesse McDaniel. He was probably a master at. And there's Ron Lingle. My God, I didn't know he was living. Gotcha. Glad to have you with us, Ron. Okay. Have we missed anyone? I agree. I knew Joe. I went on a trade mission trip with Governor Hunt and a bunch of other folks, and Joe and his wife were on that trip and really got to know him well. It's a good person. Any other comments anyone else wants to make?